Alright, people, review of the week time. So, an awful lot to talk about, a lot to review, a lot of news that happened over the last week. But as we always do, well, we normally do, I should say, whenever there's fights on, we always talk about them first. But on this occasion, I want to just touch on the passings of both George Foreman and Colin Hart, the writer from The Sun. Teddy Atlas summed it up in a tweet. Now, I'm going to paraphrase, it's not the actual tweet he wrote, but he pretty much summed it up perfectly. He said, George Foreman is the fighter who, he creates the legacy, he creates the memories, and Colin Hart is the man who articulates those memories, who articulates that legacy. And that's not exactly how he worded it, but that's essentially the gist of what he was saying. And he's absolutely spot on. I think he hit the nail on the head with that one. Both George Foreman and Colin Hart have left a massive imprint on the world of boxing, and it's a loss for the sport that we lost both of them this weekend. George Foreman, 76 years old, very sudden. I woke up at about 6:30 on Saturday morning. I just checked my phone to see that. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because it just seemed so out of the blue, very sudden. I spoke about George Foreman in a recent video, or a video I did after his passing, that he did mean a lot to me as a fighter. I watched a lot of his fights, I followed his career. I was only a baby. Well, I wasn't born when his first career was going on, and I was only a baby, literally a baby, when he won the heavyweight title again. So I look back on his career is probably the best way I could be saying it, and it was tremendous. And Colin Hart, I mean, he's been around since forever, it seems. He wrote for The Sun, he was always there at the Sky shows when Frank was doing his thing with Sky. He was there at Box Nation shows, he was still being interviewed up until I think the end of last year. I've never had a personal one-to-one interaction with Colin Hart, but I have seen him in person. Obviously, he is there. I've been to a lot of Queensbury events with media, as in obviously he has media, and he's obviously there still. He's been there at a couple of press conferences, he's been there on a couple of fight nights, and it's weird, you're seeing an absolute, a legend, a hulk of the sport. And, I think for me, coming up, I guess as a journalist, but you know what I mean, like what I do, some people would consider it that. You look at the people like Colin Hart, and you have nothing but respect and admiration for them. And yeah, it's a very sad weekend for boxing, to have two. The word legend gets thrown around, but there's no doubt in my mind that both Colin Hart and George Foreman are legends true and true. They really are. I think they're both in the Hall of Fame. I know Foreman is. I'm pretty sure Colin Hart is too. So legends true and true. It was a very sad weekend for boxing that we lost both of them. So I started this video by saying rest in peace to George Foreman and to Colin Hart. Condolences, prayers all go out to both their respective families at this difficult time. Now we will talk about the fights that happened over the weekend. Now I'm going to start by talking briefly about the PBC card that happened last night in Nevada. And I say briefly because, well, I didn't see any of the fights with the exception of Fundora. I saw him versus Chordell Booker, and whoa. Chordell Booker, he's 33 years old, so this is probably his first and real last crack. He got stopped in a round by Amo Williams 3 years ago now almost. Yeah, he gave no real resistance, not much to Fundora. Fundora, the Tower Inferno, made short work of this guy. He really did. It was a complete mismatch. It really truly was. Fundora absolutely, it's still insane when you see Sebastian Fundora in the ring. The man is nearly 6'6", and he weighed in for this fight at just over 152 pounds. I just, honestly, it's a sight to behold seeing Sebastian Fundora in there. If you are 6'5.5", nearly 6'6", you're considered a tall enough heavyweight. If you're fighting at light heavyweight or cruiserweight, you're considered a very tall light heavyweight or cruiserweight at that size. He's fighting at 154 pounds. It's crazy how big this guy is. I seen it fairly one-sided, stopped in the fourth round, and that's really all I can say to that. I mean, PBC, they're not doing many shows, but there you go. So that's really all I can say on the PBC show. I did see the show that the Zone had yesterday morning, that Eddie Hearn put on over there in Australia. Now, I haven't had a chance to look at Tierra Moana Romana. Tierra Moana. I wonder what way David Diamante introduces him. Does he say the name 3 times, or what way does he do it? But he fought a guy called James Sinna and stopped him in a round. Didn't see it. Have to have a look at it. I am interested about this guy. I have to say, he looks interesting. He looks interesting, to say the least. I see Shanika Johnson. She actually stopped Nia Hughes this time. Nia Hughes is well into her 40s, isn't she? Yeah, 42. There was a lot of controversy about their fight last year because I believe Nia Hughes was announced as the winner, and then they realised, mistakes were made, and then they had to bring it back. There was no need for the scorecards this time. So Nia Hughes at 42, I don't know what more else she has left in the tank at that age now, to be honest, which I know women's boxing is, you could probably have more longevity because the quality of opposition is not the greatest, but Father Time, whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. I don't think he really cares, to be honest with you. Sky Nicholson versus Tiara Brown. Right, so I am someone who has seen next to nothing of Sky Nicholson, and I watched this fight. I actually went and watched it yesterday evening. I went out and watched it yesterday evening, headphones on, and I have to say, it could have went either way. I've seen a lot of people complaining that Brown got the decision. Some people were really up in arms. How dare they rob Sky Nicholson and this, that and the other. And what's Eddie doing? Blah, 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 he's not doing enough and this, that and the other. It could have really went either way. I am someone who definitely favours the aggressor. I've always said that when I'm looking at a fight. I like to see the aggressor. I like to see someone who's actually, trying to make the fight rather than someone just moving around the ring. It seemed like Nicholson was doing a bit too much of that. I've been told that that's really her game. She's easy on the eye from a looks point of view, but in terms of her fighting style, it's not the easiest to look at. And I can definitely see that, and I can believe that. There's not a lot of power there for Nicholson at all, so that is a big issue. I know with female boxing, again, knockouts are something that, they're few and far between. But you still don't want the opponent all over you, like a bad smell or something like that. So Nicholson, look, I've no doubt that she'll most likely come again. She's only, 29, 30, so she's not that old. And as I said, female boxing, the talent pool is quite small. So no doubt that she'll do something again. I believe this was a mandatory defence. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. So chances are, although it was a close competitive fight, could have went either way, chances are Nicholson won't be, obliged to rematch. She'll have to go and earn that. So that was the co-main. In the main event, this had world title implications in the future as well. George Kambosos faced late replacement Jake Wiley. Now, Wiley, 24 years old, went into this fight with a record of 16-1. His only loss came to a guy who hadn't actually won a professional fight. In 2023, he was stopped in a couple of rounds. So that's not normally a crazy good indication. He did have a split decision as well early on in his career, but he seemed to have been amassing a nice little record, plenty of knockouts, and, at the very least, he was doing something. So he takes this fight on a couple of days' notice. He was meant to be fighting on Tim Tszyu's undercard, and although George Kambosos was the clear winner, he clearly won this fight, there's no disputing that, he didn't look, in my opinion, the best. At times in this fight, he looked a bit, a bit too easy to hit, a few times I felt that he was, I don't want to say stunned, but hurt, and he looked to be forcing a lot of his work at times. His hand speed looked on point, but he couldn't make a dent in this Jake Wiley guy. And bear in mind, as I said, he's been stopped before by a guy who hadn't had any professional wins, and that's only 2 years ago, so it's not like it happened years and years and years ago where, you could say, oh, maybe, no, 2 years ago it's nothing. So for Kambosos, I looked at him and I just thought, oh my God, this is the same guy who beat Teofimo Lopez nearly 4 years ago now. And I don't want to call him this generation's Buster Douglas, but that seems to be the way it's going. He's better than Buster Douglas in that sense, since he's not fallen, completely off the radar. But I don't see him beating any of the guys at 140 pounds. I think Subriel Matias beats him. I think Liam Paro beats him. And I think Richardson Hitchens, who it's reported he will be facing, I'll get it for you here if I can actually find it, on June the 21st. I think Richardson Hitchens will beat him as well. I really do. So Kambosos, as good as, at times he looked in the fight, other times he looked bang average. And I think Richardson Hitchens will win that fight when they face on June 21st. Although saying that, Kambosos suffered a cut. June is not that far away. Listen, some cuts heal quicker than others, but you want to be careful with that. You don't want that to be the reason that you lose. In terms of boxing news, we will get into the news. People, they've announced the ring walks for Canelo versus William Scull on May the 3rd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now, one of the big perks of having shows in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the big shows, is that we don't have to go through that whole, especially people in the UK like myself, where we're having to get up at stupid o'clock in the morning or stay up all night, absolutely knackered tired. And I often find that the reviews are never as good. It's never as good. When they're in Riyadh, that's not a problem. Well, it'll be a problem for this one. And God help you if you're in Riyadh. The ring walk is going to be 6 a.m. Riyadh time, 4 a.m. UK time, and of course the US, 11 p.m. New York time, East Coast, and 8 p.m. on the West Coast. Why don't they just do it a bit earlier? I mean, like, if it's 11 p.m. New York time, why can't they do that at 9 p.m. New York time, and then it'd be 6 p.m. LA time? I don't see what. That's still pretty good, Although saying that having a fight on at 2 a.m. UK time is a hell of a lot better than having it on at 4 a.m. 2 a.m. is doable. Is doable. You can do it's not even an all-nighter, but it's doable. By the time the fight ends, if it goes 12 rounds, you're closer to 6. And those Riyadh season shows, they never start at their actual slot time. They always go later. So I'd say closer to 5 a.m. So, seriously, really? I don't know. Moses Itauma is set to return on the Josh Taylor Echo Usman undercard. So basically, that is the dream of being youngest heavyweight champion gone, done, dusted. It's not going to happen. I like the fact that he tried. With the way boxing is today, it's extremely unlikely. As I always say, nothing is ever impossible, but extremely unlikely. I mean, Mike Tyson had, I think, 15 or so, maybe more. He had loads of fights his first year. He had many more fights his second year before winning the title, obviously, in that year as well. Right now, with the way the landscape of boxing is nowadays, there are fighters out there who genuinely could, if they wanted to, have 30 fights a year. Or, maybe not that many, but, 15 fights in their first year. But you got to think they are going to be fighters who are not going to be signed to any long-term deal. They're probably going to be going to Hungary, Albania, places like that in between the UK and, well, you could probably do it in the UK as well, but you're going to have to fork out so much money because you'll be paying for the opponents. And you're not really going to learn anything because they're going to be absolute cab drivers. And you could probably get the 15 fights, but if you're a fighter like Itauma, who's locked in with a promoter and a network, it's just not going to happen. The fact that he was able to get, I think, 8 fights in his first year is really quite good. But that's not the norm. That's not the norm. You have a lot of fighters who turn over, and some of them you're lucky if you see them 3 or 4 times in the first year. So it was always going to be an uphill battle for Itauma, and it didn't help the fact that we're talking about a time when we had an undisputed champion. We still have a unified champion, Alexander Usyk, who's an all-time great. We've no, in the nicest way, Trevor Berbick's. We've no Ingemar Johansson's, people like that. Floyd Patterson lost to Ingemar Johansson. I forget, who did he beat? Was it Archie Moore he beat for his title? That was vacant. And that was only one title as well. But you get what I mean. Archie Moore was old by then. He was old as dirt. And, he'd actually lost to Rocky Marciano. He was a light heavyweight, all that stuff. But you get what I mean. There's no weak links. George Foreman, oldest heavyweight champion, he beat Michael Moore. Came up short against Evander Holyfield. Michael Moore is an easier touch. I know he beat Holyfield, but you know what I mean. He's not one of the stronger champions. So when you kind of need the perfect storm to do it. You need maybe at least one weaker champion, and you need a lot of activity. Unfortunately for Itauma, he didn't have the most activity. Not that he was inactive, but the activity you need to progress that quickly. And ultimately, you've got Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois. It's just not going to happen. There is no weak link amongst them, to be honest with you. He still can break Herbie Hyde's record. I think Herbie Hyde was 22 when he became WBO champion. So he could still break the youngest British heavyweight champion of all time. He's got plenty of time to do that. But youngest heavyweight, it's not going to happen. Excuse me. What else is there in terms of the boxing news? Now, I did see, because it's primarily a lot of news about, obviously, George's passing and things like that. What else is there? It does say Terence Crawford will no longer fight at 154 pounds. Well, that kind of goes without saying. I suspect Terence Crawford is probably going to bow out after the Canelo fight, win or lose. I think for Terence Crawford, that's it. He's done. He's been holding on just simply for that Canelo fight. It's been nothing else. That's what he really wants. And he's got it now. And I think that could actually come back to bite Canelo, because he is literally going to be zoned in, 100% focused on Canelo Alvarez, and that's really going to be it. Now, in terms of the TKO purses, I'm on the Ring Magazine's X account, and there's nothing about the purses on there. There's a lot of kind of talk and speculation about what's going on with those purses. Some are saying they're legit. Turkey has come out and refuted it. Basically, I don't have the purses in front of me here, but I think the gist of it was, if you're fighting in a 10-rounder and it's non-ranked by their own organisation, whichever it may be called, TKO, we'll just call it for the time being, you get something like 20 grand. If it's a top 10 kind of fight, you get 50, and so on and so forth. I think for a world title fight, their world title, you get 750 grand. Now, for me, if I look at that and I think, who are you targeting? Because if you're targeting blue-collar fighters and these purses are legit, right, just hypothetically, if you're targeting blue-collar fighters, or if you're targeting, names, even prospects who are names like Moses Itauma, they're making more than that. Ben Whittaker is a millionaire, and seriously he is, and he's done flipping nothing in his career. He's fought nobody, right? And they're already, well up there in terms of their net worth. They would never take a 20 grand fight. Never in a million years. Not going to happen. So you're not really going to get those guys who are going to want to sign for you. It's just not going to happen. So the promoters like Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, Ben Shalom, they're going to be, nothing's going to change. For world title fights, again, I think that amount, for some fighters, yeah, it might be a lot. For lighter weights, yeah, it probably is a lot. But if they don't really set the world alight the way the bigger guys do. The middleweights, light heavyweights, welterweights, heavyweights do. So again, I don't know how in God's name that's going to work. For me, that's a tricky one. That's a really, really tricky one. Turkey has since refuted it, and he's gotten kind of on the offense, kind of on the attack. So we need to watch this space on that situation and just see kind of what happens there. In terms of Anthony Joshua, it's actually said that he is injured. Eddie Hearn didn't divulge. He gave an interview with IFL and he talked about Anthony Joshua having an injury. Now, he hasn't divulged the nature of the injury, so we can only speculate at this moment in time. But he has mentioned that Anthony Joshua can't punch with this respective injury. And he's also said that AJ can't start a proper training camp until the end of May. So it's looking highly likely that he won't be back in action until at the very earliest August/September. Now, if it is September, that's a year essentially out of the ring. And given the fact that AJ is getting a bit up there in age, I know he's still a young man in that sense, but he's got a lot of wear and tear on him as a fighter. He'll be going into his 36th year this coming October. So, time is of the essence. It really is. And AJ is aware of that. He's given interviews to Ad A with the Ring Magazine Award Show, and he spoke about the fact that he knows time is not on his side. He needs to make hay while the sun shines. And at the end of the day, not being able to start camp until the end of May, having to wait then until September, you don't know what happens in camps, whether it's him or his respective opponent, whoever that may be. Things happen. Injuries happen. And if you're starting to get injured now, maybe that could mean that you're injury prone. You just don't know. So you do have to look at things and say, oh my God, how bad is this injury? What's going to happen next? A lot of people I see, because I've already done a video on this, and I know a lot of people were speculating this is a slam dunk Tyson Fury fight. Look, I'm not in the know. I don't know. Right? I don't know if Tyson Fury is planning on coming back. I suspect he probably is, because the retirement itself just seemed very kind of, there you go, so to speak. It was just very kind of, oh, I'm here, I'm retired. You're like, huh? I'm sorry, what? You're retired. I suspect that Tyson Fury probably will come back at some point. I know he's doing that whole soccer aid thing, but I think that's not till when, June, July, somewhere like that, thereabouts, June or so. I know he's doing that in the summer. And that would open the door for a potential return. And could you imagine him doing that soccer aid and announcing then and there that he's come back to the ring? Maybe not to fight Anthony Joshua straight away, but making an announcement. It will get the eyes of the world on. September seems a logical time. AJ's fought in Wembley Stadium in September before he fought Povetkin there, if you may remember. So it does, I'm not saying, because I don't know anything, but it does kind of look like a few of the stars are maybe aligning for that Tyson Fury fight. Now, I know during the week there was a lot of talk that Anthony Joshua could face Joseph Parker. I was watching some excerpts from TalkSport, and I seen an interview very recently with Don Charles. He was on TalkSport, and he was saying Simon Jordan was arguing the case that Joshua shouldn't walk into a title shot, and Spencer Oliver, God bless him, God bless him. That's all I can. Every time I say that name, I have to say that. God bless him. He's hopeless. He really is. But he was arguing that Joshua, what he's done in this sport with the eyes he puts on the sport and all that, he should walk into a world title fight, no problem. Simon Jordan was refuting that, obviously, and Don Charles said, "You both make a good point. Yes, you're right, yes, you're right, Simon Jordan. AJ should really earn that right, and there are more deserving fighters in a case of what you've done in the ring. But he does still put eyes on the sport, and he'll always have that. Fury has it, Wilder has it, they all have it. All those guys who've made millions, who've put eyes on the sport, they're always going to have that until they're completely over the hill and won't make any money." So there is talk that he could potentially face Joseph Parker as a world title shot, as a voluntary defence, because Parker will likely, if Usyk is stripped, be elevated to full champion. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think that if it came to it and AJ had a choice, fight Joseph Parker for a world title or fight Tyson Fury, in my opinion, he'd take the Fury fight. He's already admitted that he wants Tyson Fury. I think at this stage in his career, because you got to figure as well, Anthony Joshua, the pressure of being champion, the pressure of having all that responsibility on your back, it looks to me now as though that's gone. He knows he's not in the world title scene in that respect. He's not really carrying as much pressure nowadays. So when you've seen him in interviews, he does seem to have a bit more of a spring in his step. And I think that he knows himself, if he went down the road of fighting for a title again, there's all the pressure to win it, there's all the pressure that comes with having it. Do you unify? Who's your mandatory challenger? Etc, etc, etc. And I think with AJ, I truthfully don't think he wants that anymore. I think that he would look at Tyson Fury and say, well, if I can beat you, I can at least say I was the best British heavyweight of that crop. Because he can't even say he's the best heavyweight in Britain if he beats Tyson Fury, which is the mad thing, because Daniel Dubois, obviously, and I think even if Daniel Dubois loses to Usyk, you'd still probably say he's the best British heavyweight we have now, just based upon recent form. So I think for AJ, a win over Fury, or the Fury fight itself, is a more personal thing for AJ, and I think it means more to him at this stage. I know he can say he wants a third world title, but truth be told, I think if push came to shove, he'd take the Fury fight in a heartbeat over a world title fight. As for someone like Joseph Parker with his now famous call-outs that he uses, these music videos to incredible backdrop, he used Shania Twain's "You're Still the One I Want" to call Alexander Usyk out. And Alexander Usyk obviously is still the one he wants, because he wants that world title shot. He deserves that world title shot, and I think he deserves it slightly more than Daniel Dubois. It's not Joseph Parker's fault Daniel Dubois pulled out of the fight. Who has gone missing? I've said that before. God only knows where he is now, but we ain't hearing anything. We don't hear much from him anyway, but you know what I mean. But he made that call out. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I would like to see Joseph Parker get his crack at the heavyweight title. I think he deserves it. He's long overdue a title shot. He's only had one world title fight, as in him as the challenger, his whole career. And that was for a vacant title against Andy Ruiz. He won that title in New Zealand nearly 9 years ago now. Jesus, it was December 2016. And I think he deserves it after he lost to Joshua. Wilder's had world title shots, rematches with Tyson Fury. Dylan White's got world title cracks, etc. Parker hasn't. And the run he's been on, beating Deontay Wilder, beating Zhilei Zhang, beating Martin Bakole, I think he absolutely deserves it. I really do. So I'd love to see him against Usyk next, but it won't be. It'll definitely be Daniel Dubois, I would imagine. In terms of Martin Bakole, a name I mentioned there, he is announced for the Canelo Alvarez undercard. Now, the Alvarez undercard itself has Badou Jack on it. Let's see how he looks. Wink, wink. Let's see what happens in that fight. Wink, wink. Because God only knows what happens. Badou Jack, I've never seen anything like it. If you think that they're biased when it comes to AJ Fury, etc., you ain't seen nothing until you've seen a Badou Jack fight in Saudi Arabia. So let's wait and see what happens there. We have Jaime Munguia versus Bruno Saras. He's got to win that fight. Simple as. It's just simple as he's got to win it. Canelo in the main event. And also we have Martin Bakole versus F.A. Ajagba. Now, in terms of Canelo Alvarez undercards, people are complaining, it's not good enough, this, that, and the other. This is a Canelo card. Yeah, it is a Canelo card, and it's actually a lot better than most of his cards, to be honest with you. In terms of Bakole versus F.A. Ajagba, listen, had the Joseph Parker debacle not happened, I'd be saying Martin Bakole wins this fight fairly comfortably. He'll stop F.A. Ajagba in about 6-7 rounds. That's what I would be truthfully saying, hand on heart, had the Joseph Parker debacle not happened. Given the fact that he had that issue, he had that just monstrosity, which is what we'll call it, Joseph Parker fight, he looked out of shape, he got knocked out, he was pulled out very early. It was only a one-punch knockout, and he wasn't sparked out like Amir Khan against Canelo or something like that, where you need God only knows how much time to recover. He should be okay. I would still make him favourite going into this fight, but what's it for? It was originally going to be an IBF final eliminator, which would have guaranteed him a world title shot. It's now for none of them. And if he goes in there, you see, this is the problem, right? If he goes in there and does a job that I think he can do on FA Jagba, it's just going to give fighters carte blanche and say, I'm not fighting you. What do you bring to the table? Because they're going to know, right, he's still dangerous when he's in shape and when he's actually had a full camp. He's very dangerous. He could beat any of us. And F that, what do I gain? You don't gain anything. So, Bakole versus FA Jagba, I think this whole Bakole Joseph Parker debacle, it's just that, it's a debacle. Billy Nelson is an absolute fool. He just saw a big payday and thought nothing of it, and there's going to be repercussions for that. There will be, even if he wins the fight. It's like, well, what's he gaining? He's going to have to fight his way to another world title shot, and God knows what will happen now in between. So there you go. That's my thoughts on everything. Let me know yours in the comments section below. As always, people, I really do hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. And people, until next time, as always, I will leave it there. Peace.